America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Town of Plattsburgh Town Board to order for December 1st, 2008. If we could have a roll call, please.
Bernard Bassett.
Here.
Thomas Wood.
Here.
Sheila Brockway. Here. Gerard Brennan.
Here.
Martin Mannix.
Here.
James Coffey.
Resolution 362.
Resolved that the minutes of the November 17th and November 24th meeting be approved in the reading of minutes and dispensed with.
Have a motion? Mr. Wood, second. Ms. Brockway. Any discussion? Okay.
It's the two meetings, right?
Right.
Yeah.
A roll call?
Thomas Wood.
Yes.
Sheila Brockway. Yes. Gerard Brennan.
Yes.
Martin Mannix.
Yes.
Bernard Bassett.
Yes. Portion of our meeting where we invite anyone who would like to address the board to do so, stating your name, address, and limiting their comments to 5 minutes, please.
John St. Germain, 2391 Route 3 Cahill. I received your letter, Bernie, in reference to the zoning board, the request interpretation. It really didn't tell me anything, because it didn't address the question of the right-of-way. It gave me a great deal of legalese from CJ, which I expected. He said that's what he would do to it if it was pushed. The only thing that I got out of all of this was the fact that the ordinance itself, he gave me a definition of what an exemption is, and I already knew that. So I really didn't get anything out of this other than the fact that I guess to assume that political signs are exempt from the zoning ordinance, except for the 3-day is the only thing that's applicable to the election or event. The object of the time of that we met as a committee was to try to deal with Article 6 of the zoning ordinance entitled Signs, which says, it sets forth the purpose of the article is to protect and promote the general welfare, public health, safety, and property values of the community. Create a more attractive business climate, enhance and protect the physical appearance of the community, which these signs certainly don't. Preserve scenic and natural beauty of the designated area and provide a more enjoyable and pleasing community. It's further intended hereby to reduce sign and advertising distractions and obstructions that may contribute to the traffic accidents. Reduce hazards that may be caused by signs, overhang, or projection from public rights of way. Provide more open space and curb the deterioration of natural beauty and community environment. I had hoped that the revisions we had made in the ordinance would have done this. I thought at the time most of our committee were in favor of this because of the fact that I know years ago there didn't used to be the political signs that there are now along the roadways and what have you. And of course, the fall of the year is when our area is supposedly best for tourists and the most attractive for the area. Having said all that, basically, I'm not going to push the issue any further. Basically, I would hope that maybe either the recommendation of the zoning board, which is that the town board take a look at it and perhaps try to clear it up as to just what the intent is there, or if it's going to stay as is, or if it can be addressed in the comprehensive land use plan. I don't know. The other issue I got, Bernie, was on the FOIL request. You sent me a letter in reference to the appeal. I thank you for getting back to me as quick as you did. But the problem I have with your letter is it says that I am writing in response to your application for public access to records on October 28, 2008. On that form, you indicated that you were appealing the denial of your request to inspect 2008 records. Let me first of all share that the request has not been denied. Well, I realize what you're saying. The request itself was not denied, but access to the records was denied by Mr. Manning. As you well know, if you had talked to him. You said, I was not in the office on the 28th when you began the extensive review of the town's vouchers from 2008. I realize you weren't in the office, and I realize you were out with shoulder operation, but Sheila was here, and she's the deputy supervisor. Now, I sat in the back of this room, and Sheila was in the back of this room. We sat at the same table. We talked for about 15 minutes, and she never said, John, you can't look at them records. John, you shouldn't be looking at those records. Or do we have any procedure that goes with looking at these records? We basically talked about small talk. The other thing that bothers me is that I realize that we probably still don't have a board of ethics. I think when somebody abuses their power like that and does something that they're not authorized to do, they should have to be answerable to somebody. I did what I was told at the time, which Amy had said was, you know, I could look at the records. Diane had called her, notified her that I wanted to see the records. Amy said to come down. She had the FOIL report all filled out. I signed it, and I told her that I was going to be here looking at the records. I went to Diane. I guess Diane probably didn't realize that, I don't know, I looked at the records for 8 years, and she was used to the fact that I audited the bills for 8 years, whether I was on the audit committee or not. And she basically knew, I knew, that you had to keep them in order, where they were, what have you, and she instructed me to remove the record. And I did. I did everything that I was supposed to do, as far as I know, to be able to look at these records. Why I was stopped by Mr. Mannix, I don't know. I assume there's nothing in there that he wanted me not to see, but I would hope to continue to look at the records. But you have some stipulations here, and I talked to Mr. Freeman, and I asked Amy if they were in writing, and she couldn't find them anyplace in writing. And I said to Mr. Freeman that I read your letter and the portion, the request of it, and he said that John, you nor the clerk, the records manager clerk, is a mind reader. How would you know about these other stipulations that you people have? Because in your very letter you said that we had recently discussed this at a special department head meeting, but some of the specifics may not have been communicated at that time. But there is nothing relating to the rest of this stuff. All requests for documents must be brought to the records officer, our town clerk, or her deputy, and an application for public access to the records must be completed, indicating specific records being requested. The request will be responded to within 5 days. That was done. The next one is request to review original documents must take place with supervision and observation by an employee of the town, preferably from the clerk's office, an appropriate location to review the records, and will also need to be arranged. Now, I agree with that 100%. I think it's what you should have in place. But it wasn't in place at the time that I observed the records. Records must be delivered to the individual requesting to review them and returned to the appropriate department by the employee, preferably from the clerk's office. I agree with that 100%. I think it's an excellent idea. I don't think you should just let any Tom, Dick, or Harry come in here and be able to walk off with records. It makes sense. But put this in writing with the FOIL report so the records manager clerk officer knows that this is what the procedure is. If the volume of information requested and our time demand is such that an employee is not free to transfer documents back and forth, arrangements will be made in a reasonable time period to enable the review of the requested records. I agree with that. The only problem thing I see is it took me 8 hours to do 1/3 of the vouchers. It's going to take probably 20 hours to do them all. And to tie up a personnel for that length of time, I would hope that there would be another way. Either there be a desk set up in town clerk's office, or I used to do them in the zoning, back in the zoning, on the big table back there where the clerk for the assessor or the clerk for the planning or the clerk for the zoning used to be able to watch me. So they always knew a record. I hope that would be set up. And that no time should records be taken from the file by anyone other than the appropriate town officials, and at no time should the records be left without monitoring by a town employee. And I agree with that. I think you're right on. The only problem is somebody should have told me that, you know, this is the procedure, John, and had it in writing and you know, and put it into the FOIL report. The only thing that I now want is basically to see the rest of the vouchers and to know what is the procedure I have to follow. I talked to Amy about this. I asked her to bring it to you people and see what you decide. Actually, it's her decision. She should actually recommend to you people because they're her records and only her records. Nobody else has any authority over them. And I know Rick came in, and I talked to Rick while I was going through those records. In the morning, there was a guy from the audit department who was there, and I asked him if I was going to bother him being in here. He said no, that was fine. Diane came in 2 or 3 times. Stephanie came in. Nobody ever said anything to me about anything about the records, and I just did what I did until I had the confrontation with Marty, and which I don't think he was using very good judgment, because being somebody like myself, I'm a little more reserved. But if it had been somebody else that had been in here, he'd have probably been picking himself up off the floor, and that would be unfortunate to have an altercation like that over something as ridiculous as this. So all I'm asking now is if you could get the guidelines together in writing, a place for me to look at the records and be able to continue on. Thank you.
And again, as everybody I think well knows, I don't like, this is an opportunity for people to address the board, and it's not a good opportunity to get involved in a back and forth, and we don't always have materials available. But a couple of quick comments. First of all, the response to the questions about political signs, 2/3 of the way down through the first page, it is noted, section 6.2H, that posting prohibitions which provides that no signs, printed bills, or other advertising shall be affixed to any tree, utility pole, power pole, or placed in any public space or public right-of-way. But then, as indicated, it does go further to note that political signs are exempt from that, with the exception of picking them up at the end. I know when the issue was brought forth, we did a lot of new research. Mr. Lee did a great deal as well, and found that it was a contentious issue in many communities that tried to, for whatever reason, regulate political signs, but at the end of the day, they were found to be exempt. But it did talk about the public right-of-way, and no signs should be placed in public right-of-way. The other quick comment I want to make, you're concurring with the bullets of some basic procedures for reviewing documents is good. Those are basically what I have also heard from Association of Towns and workshops and official flyers and so on. It's just the basic stuff. Depending what an individual is looking for, many times, if it's a simple copy of something, you turn around, you hand it to the individual. We're here to serve the community. Sometimes it's far more complex. I think one time we had someone wanted every communication that was ever had, every bill, every anything at all with a neighbor. They had some issues going on. I mean, that wasn't even a rational request. When you get involved with things, as you mentioned, hours spent, and this isn't done, we all know the size of the abstract twice a month. It's quite substantive. It will take hours. At any time that someone wants to do something of that nature, and you're right, we have to protect the integrity of the original documents. I reviewed some in Clinton County today, Clinton County Government Center, and they were gotten for me, and I reviewed them in the presence of employees. We just need to make some arrangements. It may be such that if you have all day, maybe we don't have all day that day. It might be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It might be Monday, Tuesday morning, and Wednesday, Thursday afternoon. But it certainly will be accommodated and accommodated in a way that helps to expedite. There may be a time when there's no one available to get the records, and we quite honestly have discovered that, especially with billing, there could be sensitive information on a billing. There could be social security numbers that simply would be needed to be removed prior to or covered prior to sharing the document. And again, that can take some time. Wanting to look at all those is simply going to take a number of hours. If you spread it out over weeks, if you try to do it in a consecutive week. The town has a number of employees, and it may even change. It may be one person for the first couple hours in the morning, and maybe a different location and a different person for a couple hours in the afternoon. I think the thing that happened, and I want to carefully make sure that we aren't disparaging Mr. Mannix for doing something that he and I had discussed on the phone, and I asked him on my behalf to intervene, because it appeared there was no process in place, and that wasn't right either. Not to imply that anything would be changed or taken, but if anything would come up missing, then it just wasn't being done right. That it simply needed to stop, and we needed to review the process and put the right things in place. And at no time Mr. St. Germain or anyone else would be denied from seeing original copies of bills or any other documents. But something of that magnitude is going to take time. It won't always be at a convenient time, but we will be consistent and work to make sure that it gets resolved as rapidly as possible. But you're right, and the bullets were simply directed at that type of a request and the standard operating procedures. With that said, and I know your concern is wanting to come in and see the balance, I would say, again, give Amy a call, see her, she'll go find out who's available either in her office or in other offices, and what spots would be available, and make sure that Diane and or Nikki are available to get the files and make those arrangements.
No, they have to go through them first.
Well, they would have to,
Exact stuff.
otherwise they wouldn't know that there, if anything is there that's sensitive. I think the thing that gets becomes difficult, and I've had this conversation with individuals at a variety of levels. The public has a right to come in and see what their elected representatives are doing, the business that takes place. And as much as we try to have open forums, it may not be the right time for some individuals. They may not have access to that information. They still have a right to come in and access notes and bills and so on. But we don't have people sitting around doing nothing, waiting for FOIL requests to come in. It some days could mean doing the business that's necessary and at hand, or providing the information and materials for someone to take a look at. You have to have a balance. I know Diane, and I get very protective of her because she's not one to say no very quickly. With working on the audits and the budget and everything that has to happen, for her to take the time to do that, and spend a day, a few minutes out of every hour, all day long, and maybe the next day, and then review these, because if something gets passed on, that's a bill to an attorney that could have a little more information than it should, and that were to be misrepresented, obviously she's the one who's in charge to let it go. So she's going to have to take time. And that might mean duplicating and blocking out the inappropriate information. And it's ironic, as we look through, we did see some vouchers that did have Social Security numbers in them. With the HIPAA laws are extremely sensitive. We have bills from insurance companies, bills from PERMA. So yes, that means today, should I take 3-4 hours out and not do the things that I was going to do, it could present some issues. So ideally, over a period of time, and this is what Association of Towns and Mr. Friedman also has indicated, the idea is that we're not restricting or making it difficult for people to get information. That doesn't mean you have to get everything you want at the moment you want it. As long as we're reasonably trying to meet the request and we're working toward the goal of seeing all of anything, then we're meeting our FOIL obligations.
Could you put those procedures in writing?
They are in writing. That's what Mr. St. Germain has.
Oh,
Now, all procedures for all FOIL requests, I don't even know if anybody has that. You kind of have to look, and most of them are very simple. Could I have a copy of?
Can I?
But those bullets, and I did pass on to Amy, and we reviewed with counselors for that type of request, they're there. So if anybody would come in, the clerk's office knows. And as important as anything, it's a small community. I mean, any neighbor, Mr. Robert, who worked here many, many years, he's a good community member, he might walk in and ask one of our department heads, by the way, could you give me a copy of? Well, that's not the appropriate thing to do. That's not procedure. So it always needs to go to the clerks. But I was trying to make a point in a department head meeting that department heads need to send people to the clerk's office. The other selfish reason for that is when my old buddy comes in and my other old war buddy comes in and they want something and they have a question, I'm going to send the clerk, but I've just lost 15 minutes of casual conversation, and again, I'm not doing the job I should be doing. Mr. Mannix?
I just, in regards to the codification, if you will, of the rules regarding all ramifications of FOIL, They exist in federal law, they exist in state law, they exist in court cases that have been brought, and those court cases affect those laws. I would say there isn't a month goes by that we don't receive some kind of a notification of, some alert of some court case that was held on FOIL that's now changing what you have to do. So to have a hard and set kind of set of rules that you can put on 3 pieces of paper, not going to happen.
No, I don't mean that. I believe that, there are these FOIL laws, and then the municipalities have the right to have their own rules above and beyond those, that don't negate or
I don't
make.
think so. I don't think so. Not when it
Yeah, they
comes to
can.
FOIL.
For example, you can come, a person can come and look at material 2 hours a day on Wednesday. The state doesn't say that, but you can.
I understand that.
That's what I'm
Not-
saying.
not-
That's not true. See, that's the problem with, as long as you have business hours, FOIL says you must allow people to look at the records during business hours.
No, it doesn't,
Yes,
John.
it does.
No, it doesn't, John.
Okay.
It doesn't say that we have to
And-
set aside an employee for 8 hours a day.
No, it doesn't say you have to set aside an employee.
It says that we have to allow the review of the records during business hours. But it does not tell us how many hours a day we have to make the records available for.
During
And I don't
business
believe,
hours.
Debbie, I don't believe that we as a town can supersede FOIL law and say that the only time you can review records is on Tuesday and Thursday between the hours of 2 and 4. I believe that Mr. Freeman would come back to us and say that we are overly restricting the access of these. All right?
Colin.
Well, recently, I think in October of this year, and some of this came about, if I could just take a minute, some of this came about with the procedure, came about to try and give to our department heads and Amy's office something that she could follow so that there would be a procedure followed that would have some, it would be, what's the word I'm looking for? It'd be fair and equal. Consistent, thank you, it would be consistent, okay? One of the things that Governor Patterson did, and I believe it was in October, was pass legislation or sign into law, something that said that if you wanted a copy of something, John, that was electronically transcribed,
Yep.
and you were willing to pay for somebody to do it,
Yep.
that we could ask you to pay that.
Sure.
What I thought was, an interpretation of that would be, if you wanted to review records, and it took more than 2 hours, and you were willing to pay the lowest salary of any employee, we could ask you to do that. Our attorney said, no, we can't.
No, you can't.
No, we can't. So that was not put down in the procedures. What was done was a procedure was tried to be implemented so that Amy would have direction, anybody requesting would have guidance as to how that direction would go. But
And I'm not arguing, what I'm arguing about is the fact that Amy is the person that has to set the procedure, as far as I'm concerned. And Marty and Bernie don't have that authority. The board does. But those two, as individuals, don't have that authority. 3 of yous do, 2 of yous don't. You know that. You've been on the board a long time. And that's the thing. It's Amy's call. If she wants this, then you people should pass along a resolution.
I don't think
I'm going to stop
put it in the
the
policy.
conversation.
Well
We're
over 50
far in
minutes.
excess of where we should be. And if there's an issue that needs to be discussed, we certainly can do it any time during the week. We can do it during a work session, but this is going too far. The bottom line is the town is available at any time. Anyone may go to the clerk, make a FOIL request for whatever they want. The clerk has a number of days, I believe it's 5, that she has to respond, and how that's going to be answered, but not even to necessarily provide that information in 5 days. If someone wants a copy of minutes they missed, we're going to give them a copy. If it's something that looks more complex and with concern, that time frame gives us an opportunity to find out what is the appropriate process. The other thing that can happen is anybody any elected official, it could be a department head, who is aware and knowledgeable of standard process and procedure can always remind us, bring that to our attention. You know, we're not passing laws and regulation of things that already exist. Enough and probably too much on that this evening. And unfortunately,
let
as
the record
Mr.
show that Mr. St. Germain left the room and left the building.
Right. And he
Didn't want to hear your answer.
He's certainly entitled to his opinion and do his interpretations. He does that quite well, but, you know, laws as law is. Resolution 363.
Anyone else speak?
I would like to,
I'm sorry, I thought everybody waived their time to Mr. St. Germain so we could talk about his issue for 30 minutes instead of 5.
Is it,
Why don't you come forward, please, state your name, give us your address.
well, all right. I didn't intend to say anything, but it's Nyla Bacon from Head. I'm with the understanding that each one of you has to go through the FOIL procedure before you can look at any records. Is that true?
I would say there's probably some sensitive documents, personnel records that we cannot
Well, yeah,
access on
personnel,
our
I'm
own.
not interested
As
in
far
personnel.
as the other things, Nyla, no. Elected officials, if we wanted to take a look at the vouchers, we could take a look at the vouchers. I don't believe it would be proper for any one of us, and I believe Bernie will back me up on this, since this whole thing has arose, has told us that he doesn't even think that elected officials should be going in and helping themselves to records in filing cabinets. If I want to see vouchers from March, I will ask Diane to pull those vouchers. I'm not allowed to go in there, nor should I be allowed to go in there, rifling through filing cabinets to try to find the correct
But you
records.
don't have to FOIL.
I don't have to FOIL because I'm part of the legislative body. I have a right to that information. The public does not have a right to the expectation of being able to come in here and just grab whatever they want.
But-
That's why
well,
FOIL
no,
laws,
the-
the FOIL laws were created to give them guidelines, to give them the opportunity to access those.
There's some
documents.
common sense here, too. There are 4 of us, and I don't know what the last census is, but the line of concerned citizens that may come in and say, I want to see now, is unmanageable. So there has to be a process. And we also find that people sometimes want to use the town to help them resolve some neighborly issues. There has to be a process. In order for counselors to make good decisions, keep themselves knowledgeable, they may need to access records and information. But that does not allow them to use that ability and power to supersede HIPAA laws, to supersede laws concerning confidential information, personnel information, and so on. So there is a line, and it's a very clear line.
Yeah,
But there's a
maybe you
difference
would
also.
know when you FOIL something, whether it's a proper, thing that you can actually look at.
And 99% of the time, we would know, too. That's why we
Yeah.
go to New York City, we get the Association of Towns magazines, we have hotlines to the attorneys.
But if she says, whatever, you make out the proper procedure, and then somebody like Marty comes in and says, you can't look at this,
Marty was
well,
doing
then I
my
would
work.
bring the law in.
The process wasn't being followed, and if the law came in, it would be to remove the person who was not following the appropriate procedures. That's the way
But
it
if I
is.
had been through the proper procedures and somebody tried to stop me,
weren't being
then I would
followed.
follow the law.
At that point, they weren't being followed.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I
Okay,
said.
yeah, I know, is all we need to hear.
But
That's all we need
what
to
I
hear.
said. If somebody stopped me, I had gone through the proper procedures and everything else,
Well,
the law would have been called immediately.
I'm not sure what games we're into here, but I really don't want to play them. And maybe in the future, we need to be a little more firm when people are not following procedures.
For the record, Bernie, there's 5 of you, not 4.
For others.
4 others.
Would anyone else like to address the board this evening? As long as we're warmed up.
may I make a statement? As my name has been bandied about in this room for a fair amount tonight. Number one,
You can't take it through.
pardon?
I don't want to hear, you're here to listen.
If you want to hear the truth, I'd be more than happy to tell you what transpired.
I know.
Okay.
Expired.
Well, because you heard it direct from someone, okay? I'm a person who was in the room, and all I'll tell you is that it was blatantly clear to me that the process that we had discussed, that I was aware of, had been explained to department heads, was not being followed. No one in their right mind would allow a person to take a file to walk out of the room with that file, to go into a room where they were now unaccompanied by anyone, and to go through the files. That is such a blatant disregard for the security of public records that it's beyond belief. So at that point in time, when John brought back the file and wanted to take another file, I said, John, you're not going to be able to take another file out of the room. I said, I understand that someone gave you the file and you took the file out. And I'm not accusing you of having done anything wrong, but the process is not the process that should be followed, period. In terms of whether Marty did anything, Marty's not the one who did any pushing and shoving. Marty is the one who on 3 separate occasions explained to John that he ought to stop pushing me because I wasn't going to move. Period. Nothing more than that. Had anybody wanted to call anybody from the state police or the sheriff's department, I would have welcomed the call. All right? There were other people in the room who were getting nervous about where that might go. Okay? I owe no apology to John for what I did. If I were presented with the same set of circumstances, I would do it again in a heartbeat. We have a responsibility to protect records, okay? That responsibility primarily rests in Amy's office. Amy was not here. I couldn't go to Amy and say, Amy, you know, here's what I see is happening, etc. So I stepped in. I was the only council person who was in the office at the time. Sheila had left, Amy had left. Okay, not that Amy's a council person, but she had left. So I was the only person who was here, and that's why I stepped in as I did. What John is asking for when he says he doesn't want to come in and he doesn't want to look at the records for a period of time and then have to come back and look at the records, what he's asking for is the privileges that existed for him when he was a member of the town board. He's no longer a member of the town board. The voters of the town of Plattsburgh removed him from that position. Okay? He is a citizen as anyone else is a citizen. He has the same rights and privileges that anybody else has, and I will defend his rights and privileges. But I won't grant him extra privileges. Because if you do that, you create a precedent that now you have to give those privileges to somebody else. That's my point.
Okay, enough. Like I said, we've all
Okay.
given it too much to try and accommodate where accommodation is not going to be acknowledged. Resolution 363.
Resolved that the abstract of audited claims number 12A in the amount of $941,304.95 be received as reviewed by the audit committee, and the supervisor is hereby authorized to pay said abstracts.
A motion? Mr. Wood, second. Mr.
Second.
Renega. Any discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood?
Yes.
Sheila Brockway?
Yes.
Gerard Renega?
Yes.
Martin Mannix?
Yes.
Bernard Bassett?
Yes. Resolution 364.
Resolved to receive and place on file a report from Steve Einhoff, Codes Enforcement Officer, for November of 2008.
A motion? Mr. Brockway, second.
Second.
Mr. Renega. Now, I spoke with Steve about his format, and it's one thing we are endeavoring to do. There were some events this afternoon that I'll share later in an executive session because it concerns pending litigation that suddenly cropped up, and it occupied my time. But as I mentioned to Steve, I said seeing these numbers is important, but they don't paint the picture. For example, I'll just look at the first one. It really doesn't matter, I guess. That we have 33 building permits this month. How many did we have last month? 23 or 53? And how many a year ago this month? Is this month typical that we would get that many? I said we really need to see this data in spreadsheet form. We need to think about that as we go through 2009. I would like to see all these particular fee types in a vertical column, but then 12 columns across it. So every month I can see how the new month compares with the previous and begin to see a trend. And I would like to look backward as well, because If we don't use the past and attempt to predict the future based on the information coming in, how do we make decisions? And this goes along with some conversations we've been having with software. My comment was, will your software produce that? It should. You've got all the data. And not only should it be able to do that, it should be able to crank out a graph for me, a broken line graph that clearly shows the direction we're going. And again, lets me compare with some previous years. We can see where the growth is. We can see where it may be lacking. They were able to produce for me the December numbers for 2005, 6, 7, and 8. Now, we weren't able to put those together, and I just did not get the opportunity even to give these to Deborah and say, copy these, please. I'll get these in your mailbox. And I immediately began to lay them side by side so I could see what this was telling me. And I quickly went to the total, and I found of these, what have I got, 3, 4 years, 5 years. It was back in 2000, where did it go? 2005, 4 years, had the highest total. Now, we'd say, gee, I thought we were doing well and growing. It doesn't seem to be indicating that. Well, then you have to stop again and say, now that total can be skewed very quickly by a number of commercial developments as compared to a number of residential. It's going to take a lot more residential than a $10 million commercial project. But there's a great deal of information here. And we will share it with you, but you're going to see more and more of this where we need to take the data, aggregate it, and then disaggregate it, and get software that we want to see trends. We want to know, where there's positive growth, where there's stagnation, where there's negative growth. That's important. We should be able to begin to blend some of this information. Jackie's been working on that with tax receiving. And what is this telling us about assessed value of property and what the receipts are that we're getting? I wish we had started this aggressively a while ago, but it also surfaces some of our software needs. But to just look at, and I'm going to say it for myself, to just look at these numbers without having the past in front of me and knowing where this fits in the trend, we just, everybody say aye and you pass it, but what are we doing with it? We've got to stay on top of the changes. So you'll keep on seeing some of that. And what I've often seen happens in committees is somebody here will take an interest in one of these spreadsheets as they become involved. And somebody's going to look at it, Tom will look at it and say, wait a minute, it looks like we're losing something over here. Sheila will say, well, I see something positive happening, but I want to get more information. Is it happening across the town or just on, Route 3? And I think it's going to come up with, it'll give us some valuable information, but I think it will help us make better decisions and predict the future a little better. So I'll get these other copies in your boxes. Right now, about all you can do is kind of lay them by each other, but you do truly see some interesting patterns. And that's what we need to do. So we'll get that out too. And I don't know if anybody had any particulars. In general, activity is down. And as a result, funds are down. And welcome to the economy. We're not immune. In fact, the good news I heard on CNN today is that we've been in a recession for a year. And the good news of that is that means we're a year into it. We're that much, 12 months maybe closer to the end of it. But we're still on the slippery slope. It's interesting. Anyone have anything else? Any other questions? I'll get that other data in your boxes, so I apologize for not getting it to you sooner, but we got it late today. A roll call.
Thomas Wood?
Yes.
Sheila Brasway?
Yes.
Gerard Renninger?
Yes.
Martin Mannix?
Yes.
Bernard Bassett?
Yes. 365.
Resolved to receive and place on file a report from Jackie Ballou, receiver of taxes for school taxes for 2008.
Have a motion? Mr. Mannix, second. Ms. Brockway. Any discussion? I'll be quiet on this one.
It's quite detailed.
Well, and you know, again, I have a lot of respect as I work with department heads. They're really responding and trying to give us more detailed information. And it doesn't come, you know, without a little bit of work on their end either. But I think you've seen that the last 3-4 months reports have been much more detailed.
I think not only the detail of the report, but one of the things that you can see in the detail is the revenue that Jackie's department is able to produce for the town. I mean, we literally have a young lady here who has taken on a job, and not only does she do her job, but she has found a way to literally pay for her job by how she handles the money, how she invest the money. I mean, she's doing a phenomenal job. She really is.
I will pass that note on to her. It is deserved. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood.
Yes.
Sheila Brockway. Gerard Renzick.
Yes.
Martin Mannix.
Yes.
Leonard Bassett.
Yes, resolution 366.
Resolved to receive and place on file a report from David Comfort of the Water and Wastewater Department for November of 2008.
So moved.
Mr. Renadette, second.
I'll second.
Ms. Brockway. I would also note that this afternoon, Mr. Comfort and I were in Judge McGill's court. There are some issues concerning the easement with the Goslings on Route 3 concerning Arcadia-Morrisonville connection. We didn't know we were going there until this morning. That has been rescheduled for Thursday. We didn't have Mr. Coffey. That was a little bit of a disadvantage, but we'll keep you tuned in with how that resolves. And as long as we're on water, wastewater, kind of hot off the press today, it's genuinely looking like, and it's hard words for me to say, looking like you're going to hear something official very soon, that we will not be able to do the Moffett Road water connection before next spring. It has dragged enough for all the reasons we've probably talked about 100 times with getting the permit to go under the interstate. It's dragged enough that now there's great concern with the winter season and snow removal. DOT does not want anything staged in the turnaround. And they've got a pretty good argument for that. And for the contractor to not be able to use that area, or DOT to gamble that there won't be a snow removal problem, it just appears that it's not working out. And one of the things, it's unfortunate, and I can point some fingers, but one of the things that I think is important is that we have to have a response. People have been waiting on my words, and we were going to do it, which I thought we were. The DOT permit we knew was an issue. That's the bottom line. It doesn't look good. And I think if we had had a little more time today, we would have had a phone conference and everybody said, not going to happen.
One, you know, just to touch on it, because I did talk to Dave briefly on that last week. I have a hard time understanding why the boring can't be done without setting up in the median area, because a couple years ago, it might have been as many as 3 years ago, we did bore underneath the Saranac River. And obviously you can't stage in the middle of the Saranac River. And I would guess that the area that we had bored was at least as wide as the area that we're talking about now. So I'm just wondering if the permit is, you know, if the setting up that is the real reason, if there might be some other underlying reason. I'm sure if the roadway was 150 feet wide and there was no place in the middle of it to set up, there still would be a way to get across that entire span without having to set up midway through and trench midway through. So you know, for what it's worth, I understand that DOT is the final word on this, and if they say the permit's not going to be coming, it's not going to be coming. But I have some doubt about their reasoning as to why it can't be done, and I feel bad for the people of Moffett Road that we're so close yet so far away. The water, the pipes are outside their house, but there's no water coming through them yet.
I think DOT has said with this latest, which is really a few weeks ago, Mr. LaBerge and the town had worked with DOT, and there had to be some revisions in the engineering and so on, and a lot of discussion about the boring and whether or not there'd be a sleeve. But I think those conversations were completed in time that I was expecting the contractor was going to do their part on the permit and get it in. And this would be all done before we worried about snow. I think DOT is not saying you can't do it because of snow. They're just saying, tell us how you plan to stage the project and not use the tournament. And the contractor apparently is not feeling they can do that. But I wouldn't say it's 100% tonight, but I might say that tomorrow.
But it does point out that the foot dragging and the poor response of the Department of Transportation and the state agency in this regard, in terms of the needs of the community, and when, you know, it's pretty obvious that it's been done before and that we have the right to do it.
We had a great deal of trouble getting the permit on Route 3 because there's a brook that goes along there and so on. They just didn't want any work being done along Route 3. And it's apparently difficult, but we do get permits, and we would be able to get this one. It was not an easy process. I don't know, where the greater blame is, but again, if it isn't going to happen, those poor people need to know. And I've spent so much time and gray matter on this, I just need to say no more until next spring as well. It just doesn't seem to be productive.
One suggestion that I'd like to make is that I think we need to pursue the request for the permit, because knowing that zone, that DOT zone, if we don't, come spring, we'll be back starting from scratch.
I had that conversation with Mr. Comfort today, that I hope, if this is the case, that the contractor now submits a permit request with the staging for spring work, so the first second they can bore and connect, they do it. That was my concern as well, and I will follow up that it is. I'm seeing a lot of heads nod here, and it's the full board's concern as well.
Well, yeah, and I'd like to see a department question,
What department?
Department of Transportation.
Well,
Let those people
That's
know
a
good
they
luck.
have the water, so. You want them to have the water in the spring, so.
It's very difficult with the state right now for a number of reasons. It's probably not going to get easier as the months go on, but I will refrain. Anything else on Resolution 366? Roll call.
Thomas Wood.
Yes.
Sheila Brockway.
Yes.
Gerard Renada.
Yes.
Martin Mannix.
Yes.
Vernon Bassett.
Yes. Resolution 367.
Resolved to receive and place on file an application with fee for a license to conduct and operate Cumberland 12 cinemas located at 812 North Bull Lane, Route 9, within the town of Plattsburgh. And it is further resolved that after inspection and positive report by the code enforcement officer, that Cumberland 12 meets code requirements. And it be further resolved that the town clerk is hereby authorized to issue said license for the period of January 1st, 2009 through December 31st, 2009.
Motion.
So moved.
Mr. Wood, second.
Second.
Mr. Renadette.
Can I
Now,
have a question?
we have probably cause for a couple of good questions here.
My first question is, when I'm reading a resolution, the resolution says January through December, but the application says December through November.
Because I thought they wanted to open up in December.
Yes, that would need to be changed.
Which way?
Uh,
The
January to
resolution?
December.
Should be December.
December to November?
December 2008 to December 2009, or to November 2009?
Through November.
Yeah, 2009.
2009.
Exactly a year.
So they will have to reapply in November for the,
Amy, do these all expire December 31?
Yes.
One calendar year, or?
Well, we only have one other, which is Regal Cinema.
So I don't know what would happen if someone had a permit to open in June. Would we give them their permit to December 31 of that year, or to June of the coming year? Is it 12-month?
It's a 12-month. It's a one-year license.
Yeah.
Because I thought Peter wanted to open
So they
up
just
in
come
December.
due at different times depending on when they open.
Well, we only
Yeah,
have one.
apparently.
So,
But I thought he wanted to open in December.
Well, he does. The other thing that I'm sure you saw is missing in here is a letter of support from our code enforcement officer.
Yeah.
not until we get a letter from the...
What we really need to do this evening is table this motion because we don't have sufficient documentation that this is ready to go. I know he's chomping on the bit. There was talk last week about a tentative December 11 opening. Tentative was the key word, but we can't issue any license to operate. We have no report from our codes enforcement officer.
Can we go back to him and suggest that he also submit or remit an additional 1/12 of the $500 to cover the period of December in 2008? That'll put him on a calendar year basis. So in other words, instead of paying $500, which would be for a 12-month period, he would submit what would amount to a 13-month application.
To allow them to go to 12/31/08. I don't know if
Yep.
you can give a 13-month, Davey.
I don't believe so.
May not be able to.
Give him
yearly
one for
payment.
1 month and give him one for 12 months.
I don't know if we can do a 1 month.
We will look, I know what you're
We'll
saying.
have a
It makes
special
sense.
for new movie theaters. They get 13 months at the price of
There
12.
goes that darn town making their own rules again.
A twofer.
We'll look into that. We need to table this anyway, and I know he's going to have to act on this quickly to our next meeting, which will be next Monday, and we can,
Well, if
Resolve the
if it was,
tweaks
if we
to-
had all the information, we pass it next Monday, you'd still be able to open on 11.
Yeah.
technically, yes. As long as he's met all the codes
As long
requirements
as he's
to get a
ready to
CO.
go.
So if we
He's
get.
got to get a CO.
Now you see, well,
So is there a motion to table?
I move to table it.
I'll second.
Mr. Renadette, second is Brockway. Any discussion on the motion to table?
We're going to get the information for next time.
Yep. Yes, you will. Get a roll call on the motion to table.
Thomas Wood?
Yes.
Sheila Brockway?
Yes.
Gerard Bernadette?
Yes.
Martin Mannix?
Yes.
Bernard Bassett?
Yes. Resolution 368.
Resolved to receive and place on file an application with fee for a license to conduct and operate Regal Cinemas located in Champlain Center North within the town of Plattsburgh. It is further resolved that after inspection and positive report by the code enforcement officer, that Regal Cinemas meets the code requirement, and it be further resolved that the town clerk is hereby authorized to issue license for a period of January 1st, 2009 through December 31st, 2009.
We have a motion. Ms. Brockway, second.
second.
Mr. Mannix. Now, as we go into discussion, I don't know if you have more than I do. All I have is a piece of paper.
Me too.
Right.
We don't have the report on this one either, do
We
we?
don't
They
have
haven't paid yet,
a
right?
They have not paid.
check for payment. We don't have the report from our codes enforcement officer. I'd ask for a motion to table.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood?
Yes.
Sheila Brockway?
Yes.
Gerard Bernadette?
Yes.
Martin Mannix?
Yes.
Bernard Bassett?
Yes. As you know, town offices were closed Thursday, Friday, Thanksgiving. The agenda had to be done. We were in anticipation that both cinemas would meet their requirements, so we didn't want to slow them down. That's why they remain where they are, and we'll just bring them off the table, and they'll either be resolved Monday or they'll go away and have to start over. Resolution 369.
Whereas the town board believes it is in the best interest of the community and the residents of the town of Plattsburgh to provide adequate and safe personal wireless service to the surrounding area for emergency and non-emergency use by the general public. And improving service is a public purpose that will be beneficial to ensure to the best interest of the public health, safety, and general welfare of citizens of the town of Plattsburgh and traveling public. Therefore be it resolved that a public hearing be held on said proposed water tank lease for Verizon Wireless on Monday, December 15, 2008 at 6:05 p.m. prevailing time at the Town Hall, 151 Banker Road, Plattsburgh, New York. And it is further resolved that the town clerk is hereby authorized and directed to cause notice of the public hearing and meeting to be published in the Press Republican in accordance with town law.
A motion. Ms. Brockway, second.
Second.
Mr. Renadette. Any discussion?
This is setting the public hearing. Letter attached. After A, paragraph after A, is talking about recommending the town board that the language in the code be made a condition of a permit. Granted, and Verizon acknowledges same writing. Is that being done?
I'm anticipating our attorney to make sure his recommendation is followed. Mr. Comey keeps pretty tight rein on these. He does do a good job to protect the town and the town's future interests.
So
Mr. Coffey's had quite a bit of involvement in this particular project and trying to resolve it and get it to go forward. There was a point where Verizon just felt like the big bad utility was being picked on by the town, and they just refused to have any more conversations with Mr. Comey, etc. So we've had a lot of involvement with this one for months. Any other questions? We're just setting the public hearing at this point, trying to get it to go forward. Roll call.
Thomas Wood.
Yes.
Sheila Brockway.
Yes.
Gerard Renner.
Yes.
Martin Mannix.
Yes.
Bernard Bassett.
Yes. Resolution 370 was not in your original packet. I'm assuming everyone has a copy now. This is the result of an event that's going to happen Saturday, so we didn't have much time, but let's take action. Resolution 370.
Whereas in recognition of a historic action which happened in the Plattsburgh community during the winter of 1812 and 1813, the American Military's Retiree Association purchased a historic marker to commemorate Pike's Cantonment and fashioned in accordance with New York State standards for such historic markers. And whereas since its installation with the municipal boundaries of the city of Plattsburgh, the city has hosted and maintained the marker. And whereas in light of positive archaeological and documentary evidence of same, the location of Pike's Cantonment lies wholly within the municipal boundaries of the town of Plattsburgh, near the northern limits of the existing Clinton County International Airport, wholly within the northeast quadrant of Lot 66, Platt's Old Patent. And whereas in recognition of the location so fixed as being designated as national or register eligible by the United States government, the city has relinquished any maintenance responsibility for the marker. The AMRA will transfer ownership of the marker, waiving any future claim of interest or ownership to the town. Therefore, be it resolved that the town agrees to accept ownership and maintenance responsibility for the marker, and will cause notice of the movement of the marker to be registered with the appropriate New York State authorities. And to be further resolved that the supervisor is authorized to enter into an agreement for transfer of ownership and maintenance of Pike's Cantonment historical marker.
The motion? Mr. Renadette, second. Ms. Brockway. Any discussion? If you go out to 22, just south of the entrance to the airport, you'll see there is a marker up on the west side of the highway with a cover over it, and that is the marker. And we do have an event taking place Saturday. It's a bit of a reenactment with a reception following at the Battle of Plattsburgh Association Museum. The outdoor event is at 10 a.m. Saturday morning.
We went dressed up in rawhide and go take it back from the city.
We've already had that battle.
March down.
Forget the hide.
The city was very gracious in accepting and acknowledging that the actual location of the marker for Pike's Cantonment needed to be moved. So I want to make sure and share that. Any questions?
Yeah, no. What is our responsibility on this marker?
Same as any other marker that we have. I believe this will be number 24 in the town, and we'll get a photo of this one up on the wall on the highway as well.
So
A lot of history in the town of Plattsburgh.
10 a.m. December 6th, right? Saturday, December 6th.
Right. Roll call.
Thomas Wood.
Yes.
Sheila Brockway.
Yes.
Gerard Renner.
Yes.
Martin Mannix.
Yes.
Bernard Bassett.
Yes. This brings us near the end. I'd like a motion to go into executive session to give you an update on the work history of certain individuals
So moved. As
Mr.
stated.
Renadette,
No, second.
seconded by Ms. Brockway. Any discussion?
Do we need to also discuss anything of what we were talking about last week?
No, when we get in there, you may find out this is.
I think Tom's referring to the legal case, we had 3 discussions of legal cases.
I have no
pending or
updates
proposed.
on anything other than
Is there any other
one item.
You did
individuals
say
that we
earlier
have
pending
to
litigation in
perhaps
executive
discuss?
session.
Actually, yes, I did, and what I was referring to, I set out here, dealing with the situation with the Cable-Morseville water connection. I wanted to give an update, and I did it here, and kind of kept it low-key. So I don't need to say any more on that, other than we'll be back in court Thursday. That was, I felt in the end that was okay, public.
What you talked about last week.
So no, just the work history of a certain individual, that's all I have.
All right.
Roll call?
Thomas Wood?
Yes.
Sheila Brockway?
Yes.
Gerard Renadette?
Yes.
Martin Mannix?
Yes.
Bernard Bassett?
Yes, it's 7:10, and I don't think I'll be long.
We're not anticipating any other things after?
I'm not, but I'm not putting my...
Keep it brief, Tom.
My head on that. I just had a quick report.
I do.
Good. Just a quick report.